Culture shock is something that affects many people who have to live in a foreign country. And it's not to be taken lightly. It's not just the discovery that things are different. It's often a lot more profound. Some people experience culture shock a little more keenly than others, but it is perfectly normal and nothing to be ashamed of. You can probably deal with it a little easier if you know exactly what it is. Culture shock is basically a feeling of isolation, and there are two main causes of this. First, communication can break down. There's the obvious language barrier, of course, but that's usually surprisingly easy to deal with. It's everything else, the body language, social etiquette, things like that, things that guidebooks won't tell you. For example, when Americans come to Germany, they often complain that Germans are staring at them all the time, and this makes them feel that Germans are rude. In fact, it's because Germans hold eye contact for a little bit longer than Americans do. It's only a matter of fractions of a second, but it's enough to make Americans feel very uncomfortable. On the other hand, Germans may sometimes feel that Americans are being evasive. Second, you may lose your identity, and that is potentially even worse than any communications problems. So at home you may be somebody's child, another person's sibling, somebody else's cousin, a friend, a neighbour. Maybe you have a job, in which case you may be somebody's supervisor, somebody else's employee, and generally you have a job description. But then your spouse is ordered to transfer overseas and takes you along. Your spouse has a work permit, but you don't, so you have to stay at home. And nobody in your local area knows anything about you except that you are the foreigner. That is the only identity you have. Culture shock varies from person to person, but it usually comes in stages, a bit like this. Honeymoon phase. When you first arrive in your new country, it's a big adventure. There are so many new things to see and do, places to visit. It's just a magical fairy tale kingdom and you are actually there. Crisis. You still haven't adapted to your new diet, so you're sick rather a lot. The landlord is making unreasonable expectations. Stores close at the most inconvenient of times. Driving etiquette is different. Everything works differently from what you're used to. And so you start to feel depressed. And this is what most people call culture shock. Recovery. Soon you start to get used to your new life. All the problems that were bugging you before are either not such a big deal after all, or you can find ways around them. You start to appreciate the food, you start making friends, you start to understand some of the advantages of your host country, and you realise that your host country is no worse or no better than your home country, it's just different. Conformity. Eventually, you find that you're able to function perfectly well in your host country. At this point, things can go one of three ways. Some people still find that they just cannot wait to get back to their home country. Other people find that they just never want to leave their host country ever again. Hopefully, you will fall into the third group of people who can live perfectly happily in either country. Reverse culture shock. This is the culture shock that you feel on returning to your home country. You might not think that such a thing exists, but it does, and you should be prepared for it. There's no cure for this, and for some people, culture shock is worse than others. A lucky few never feel any culture shock at all, but the chances are you will have to work through it, but at least knowing what to expect can help to soften the blow. So, if you're about to move to a new country, don't worry, everything will be fine. It won't necessarily be easy all the time, but it will be fine. Hopefully, you'll fall into the third group. Oh, hello, Bonnie. Oh no. Yeah. Okay, what are you going to do now? Hello. Yeah. Your tail's in shot. Yes, Bonnie, your tail's in shot. Come on. Good girl.